and they actually unify in the higher dimensions. Very, very simple mathematics. And the reason this is interesting is because what the studies now have shown is that when you and I have a feeling, coherent heart-based emotion in our feelings, those emotions are actually coherent. They're linked, they're in resonance with these higher dimensions where everything is one. So when we're having an effect, when we have a feeling and we see a physical effect in our world, it's not that our feeling changed something in this three-dimensional world. Rather, our feelings are speaking to the blueprint in the higher dimensions, and we're seeing the shadow of that change in our physical world. And this, to me, tremendous implications in terms of life and death, our soul, the seat of the soul, where do we come from, where do we go in between lives, where do we go after we die, do animals have souls? All of these questions, these understandings now are bridging the language of science and the language of spirituality. And the ancient and the indigenous traditions have been here for 8,000 years in a very exciting new way that gives us this very holistic picture of who we are and how we relate to one another and what life is really all about. To me, that's very exciting as well. A growing number of mainstream scientists are now putting forward an idea that is gaining tremendous momentum regarding consciousness, who we are in consciousness, the nature of our physical reality, and how things really work. And when we first hear about this idea, it almost sounds like science fiction, and then we ask, where does science fiction come from? Many times it comes from the intuitive hit of how the world works and what's possible, and then it becomes the reality of our world. What these scientists are saying, MIT scientist Seth Lloyd, for example, in his 2000 book, Programming the Universe, literally is proposing that our entire universe and consciousness is either a computer in and of itself, that the universe is a quantum computer. This is what they're saying. Or if the universe is not a quantum computer, that the universe is the simulation that is being run on a big computer somewhere. And when I first began to hear this, at first as a scientist, I think, this sounds pretty out there. But I began to explore why mainstream physicists would, at leading universities, would begin to look at things this way. In my training, I was a senior computer systems designer for Martin Marietta Aerospace during the Cold War years. So, of course, it's my language. But the more I began to understand, and I looked at the comparisons, every computer has a language that it uses to get things done. Consciousness is the operating system of this universal computer, and belief is the language that it recognizes. Every computer turns bits of information off and on to make things happen. And I said, well, in the universe, we don't have bits. And I began looking at the comparisons, and they're looking at literally the stuff our world is made of. The atoms are the bits. When the atoms are turned on and in physical existence, they are reality. When they are not turned on, they are unatoms or anti-atoms or antimatter that are not in existence. And they're taking this so seriously, this proposition that we may literally be living a simulation of some kind, that they've done mathematical modeling to determine the probability that we are or are not living a simulation. And the mathematics suggest strongly that we are living in a simulation. And the reason I'm mentioning this here, and I know it's a very different way of thinking about things. It sounds like the movie The Matrix, but where did that come from? The reason that this is important is because when we begin talking about the soul, what the ancient indigenous traditions say to us is that while a part of our soul speaks and experiences through this body, we're not really here at all. That our higher self is a part of a greater existence, and we always go like this, it's somewhere else expressing through this body. We've just come back from a tour in Australia, and the Aboriginals in Australia, as well as many other traditions, say this isn't the real world, this is the illusionary world. And they spend more of their time in what they believe is the real world and what we would call the dream state. So all of this ties together when we talk about life and death, existence, consciousness, between lifetimes. Where do we go when we leave this body? From the perspective of these new ways of seeing things from physicists and quantum physicists who are looking at this as a simulation, it's when our part of the simulation is over. It doesn't mean that we are gone forever. It just means that we're no longer expressing here, and we're in those higher dimensions wherever this simulation is being run from. So it is a fascinating concept. And the more we begin to explore it, and when you look at the mathematics and they plug in all the variables, they say it's more likely than not that we are actually living in a universe that is the result of a massive simulation that's being run from somewhere else. Sounds like a Star Trek episode. Seth Lloyd is the man, the MIT physics professor, who's developed the first feasible, viable quantum computer. And he said even in the infancy of our computers, a quantum computer is so powerful, it wouldn't take much more to model an entire universe on a quantum computer. And the thinking is that who or whatever is responsible for the simulation is probably light years ahead of us in terms of technology. So to believe that they may have quantum computers that could manipulate the bits of matter. And it sounds very technical in some respects, and it stretches us in some respects. And that's the purpose of films like this. We're looking for new ideas, new ways to think out of the box, whether it is a reality or even if it's only a metaphor. Even if we only use this as a metaphor, it's a powerful metaphor that allows us to hang our beliefs upon, because whether it is a physical reality or a metaphor that we live in a simulation, the bottom line is this, that if we understand the language that this reality recognizes, then we are no longer limited by the laws, the relative laws of physics as we know them. It means that we no longer have to suffer in our lives or age, or we don't have to have the poverty and the disease. We don't have to have the war. If we understand the language, then we literally can rewrite the reality code that runs our real or metaphoric simulation. And to me, we need some new ideas to look at the world. Because what we're seeing now is so many people believe there's a single physical reality, and if you want to change it, you've got to go out there and hammer it into submission, militarily, economically, men bumping chests with men, you know, guys with big armies and a lot of power, and we know where that's gotten us. So my feeling is that we need new ways to think about our universe, and this is one of the most powerful and innovative ways that I've seen in a long time, and it's not so new. Just different language, because this is what the ancients have always said. They said, you're not from here, and that we don't live here, and that this world is a dream, and that this world is an illusion. And then it opens up all kinds of questions. If this is a simulation, who's the architect? When did it begin? When does it end? Maybe this is what that 2012 end date is all about. And all the convergence of all the physical parameters may be showing us that the map of time that the Mayans knew almost 5,000 years ago is actually the map showing us the end of our simulation. And it's the opportunity for us to take the training wheels off and recognize that we are empowered to speak the language that this intelligent reality recognizes, and create and live the way we choose to live. And all of these have implications in terms of life in this world, life after death.